We're now joined by SABC News correspondent Ross Cullen, who is in the UK for us. A very good afternoon, Ross. The two houses, that is the House of Lords and the House of Commons, have been paying their respects to the late Queen Elizabeth III. What were some of the messages coming through?
Yes, that's right. They gave these messages of condolence, these speeches addressing to King Charles, who listened to the Speaker of the Upper House, the Speaker of the Lower House, pass on those messages, paying tribute to Her late Majesty. And then the King Charles III, was replying. He gave his response underscoring the importance of to use his words, instrument of our democracy. You can see the Houses of Parliament behind me. That's also where Westminster Hall is located. That is where the Queen is going to be lying in state here in London for 4 full days from the end of this week through the weekend, where hundreds of thousands of people are expected here in the British capital to be able to pay their respects by filing past her coffin. But that's later in the week. What's happening today, as you say, the two speeches by the two different speakers of the Houses of Parliament, and then King Charles giving his response. He's now leaving London and heading to the Scottish capital, where he will be taking part in a procession later, where the Queen's coffin will be moved from where it is at the moment in the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh to St Giles Cathedral, also in the Scottish capital.
Of course, Ross, there are concerns or, uncertainty around what kind of a monarch King Charles III will be. And I just wondered, from what he had to say in recent days and even today speaking to the parliamentarians, whether you get a sense that he's going to follow his mother's tradition of staying in his lane when it comes to, not really enunciating his view on political processes or policies.
Absolutely. He's been making that clear in the several speeches that he's been given and the statements that he's released since the death of his mother on Thursday, that he will be upholding the constitutional principles, fulfilling the constitutional responsibilities of the British head of state. Prince Charles, as he was known then, was very well known for his activism and for speaking out on charitable causes, and particularly advocacy when it comes to the environment and supporting climate change proposals, such as reducing emissions, reducing single-use plastic use, and improving and protecting the biodiversity of the world. But he has made it clear that all of that has to come to an end if you are going to be able to uphold those constitutional responsibilities of engaging with Parliament, but not in any way interfering with or overriding Parliament. MPs, and to a slightly lesser extent in terms of scrutinising legislation, the House of Lords, but especially MPs have the final say when it comes to government legislation. So Prince Charles, as he was known when he was advocating activism, and now King Charles III, will be present, but will be fulfilling, as you mentioned, all those roles that his mother fulfilled for 70 years when she was on the throne.
Yeah. And then, of course, lastly, all the action is really happening in Edinburgh right now in terms of people being able to pass the Queen's coffin and just pay their last respects. We understand that King Charles III is going to be heading to Edinburgh. So when will everything then shift to London, where of course she's ultimately going to have her funeral at Westminster Abbey?
Yes, there will be a procession this afternoon in the Scottish capital as the Queen's coffin will be moved to lie in rest in St Giles Cathedral. There will also then be a vigil in which King Charles will take part, and after that there will be a chance for the public to be able to file past and pay their respects to the Queen's coffin in Edinburgh. And then on Tuesday she will be flown down from the Scottish capital to here to the British capital. There will be 4 full days for the public, the British public and the wider international public as well, to be able to take part in that lying in state process, where you come to pay your respects and filing past the coffin, which will be on a raised catafalque, which is the official name for the structure that the coffin will be placed on, under 24-hour guard by members of the armed services. And there will be a lot of security in place, airport style scanners, a particularly organised queuing system for the lines of the hundreds of thousands of people who are expected to want to be able to come to London, to Westminster Hall, which is where she will be lying in state. It really is a focal point of the Houses of Parliament. Behind, you can see behind me the Palace of Westminster. The oldest part of the palace is Westminster Hall. It has been the scene of where great prime ministers from the past have lain in state, where previous monarchs have been lying in state, and where the Queen will herself lie in state, but also the scene of speeches. We saw Charles de Gaulle, in the French Second World War leader, make speeches. We have seen Nelson Mandela in 2003. He also gave a speech there, and that's the location where this morning King Charles was addressing parliamentarians as well. So respecting the history and the traditions, but you're right that the focus particularly today is on Edinburgh, and then the focus will come back down to here in London later in the week.
Ross Cullen, thank you very much for your time, sir.